Chapter 1. Izanami, Talent Trait System. The Ninja Academy had 3 semesters a year. The first ran from April 1st to mid-July, the second from early September to the end of December, and the third from early January to the end of March. April 1st. Konoha Year 54, spring term opened, and the academy prepared to welcome a new cohort. 6th-year students had already graduated at the end of March, some becoming official genin, some returning for remedial study, some recruited into specialized divisions, and some leaving the ninja path entirely. Today, every other class formally advanced a grade, and the empty first-year rooms waited for the newcomers who had passed the entrance exam. Most new students arrived with parents or older siblings. Izanami did not. He was one of the few who came alone, and he didn't stare enviously at families chaperoning other children. His gaze was clinical, not jealous. He was studying something they couldn't see. When Izanami focused, small bubbles would appear around people, each bubble tinted a color and bearing text that matched that color. Sometimes bubbles shared the same hue, sometimes they differed. Some people had no bubbles at all, either they lacked a talent or their aptitude was for ordinary livelihoods the system didn't register. This sight was Izanami's golden finger. He had no surname, only the given name, Izanami. The dean had told him that name was chosen because he was born on the night of June 16. He had lived in the orphanage until he was 3, learning to read, speak, and survive on the basics, and then the dean took him to the cemetery to meet his parents and sent him into independent life. His parents had both been orphans with no surname. His father had been a chunin, killed on a mission along with his squad and jonin instructor. His mother had died in childbirth, and in her last breath, she asked the doctor to entrust the baby to the orphanage rather than to relatives. The orphanage had the village's support, and therefore no one coveted what little family property there might have been. Izanami never pretended he was owed anything. He had known from age 3 that he would have to fend for himself. Arriving in a world obsessed with bloodlines, the Hokage world, filled with stories like The Legend of the Eyes, the 5 village skirmishes, and Black Zetsu's search for his mother, Izanami hadn't panicked. He didn't despair either about being an orphan with no surname and no obvious bloodline limit. He had a cheat, the talent trait system. The system had activated when he was 1 year old. It gave him the bubble vision, and it also displayed a light screen in his mind that no mirror could reflect. The screen showed his personal info and a beginner's gift package. By the time he was 3, he had already used that gift, and his profile had changed dramatically. As he walked into the academy, he summoned that light screen. Izanami talent traits. Otsutsuki Bloodline, red. Supercog aptitude, gold. Bloodline limit, Byakugan, purple. All attribute physique, purple. Medical genius, blue. Chakra control. Points, 25. While most people carried 1 bubble or none, Izanami's profile listed 6 talents, an astonishing array. He had not always been like this. When the system first appeared, he only had a single trait, Chunin aptitude green. But by the age of 3, he had used the beginner's gift in a way that triggered a prodigious change in fate. From then on, he became a rare anomaly in this era. No one else matched his combination of traits. Through his own exploration, he had learned the talent trait system's grading: white, green, blue, purple, gold, red. He was convinced there were higher tiers above red, but he hadn't discovered them yet. The system's main function was to let its host acquire others' talent traits. Acquisition worked in 2 known ways. One was by defeating an opponent. In an evenly matched duel, there was a high chance to acquire low-level traits and a small chance for high-level ones. If a weaker fighter defeated a stronger one, the chance to gain high-level traits was very high, and low-level traits were guaranteed. In a crushing victory, the chance to obtain either low or high-level traits was small. The second method was the beginner's gift package, which gave the host 1 free copy of a specific trait from another person. When Izanami first realized he'd been born on June 16th in Konoha Year 48 and that he was the same age as Shino, he immediately planned to use that beginner's gift on Uzumaki Naruto, the world's protagonist, the reincarnation of Asura, bearer of the sage body and the 9 tails vessel. If he could replicate Naruto's Asura-related traits or sage body, he would inherit immense potential. Uchiha Sasuke, the the reincarnation of Indra with the sage eye, was another tempting target. But fate had intervened. A chance encounter with a Hyuga clan member on the street sparked a different idea, and plans to use the gift on Naruto were set aside, at least temporarily. In this era, the clearest anomalies of potential were Naruto and Sasuke. Like Hashirama and Madara, they were reincarnations of the sage's children, both carrying superkage aptitude and the potential backing of Six Paths power. If their potentials were fully realized, they could become superkage-level forces. If they received the Six Paths power, they might even surpass what Hashirama and Madara had achieved, reaching Six Paths level power. On Earth, no one in this era had greater latent strength. And beyond Earth, Chapter 2, Otsutsuki Toneri's talent entry. As a transmigrator, Izanami's narrative layer was exceptionally high, higher than anyone else on that world. After 1,000 years, most people treated the Six-Path Sage and Ninshu as myth. Izanami knew better. He knew the Six-Path Sage had a mother and a younger brother. He knew that after the two brothers sealed their mother, the elder became the Ten-Tails Jinchuriki and set out on a path of atonement, while Hamura married, took concubines, and propagated his line. When the Ten-Tails was no longer the Jinchuriki, the sage placed the Outer Path demonic statue on the moon. To guard it, Hamura led part of the Otsutsuki clan to relocate to the moon, and the branch that stayed on Earth gradually evolved into the Hyuga clan over the centuries. Just as the sage possessed the ultimate dojutsu, the Rinnegan, his sons, if their polarities were unified, could potentially awaken it. Hamura had his own ultimate dojutsu, the Reincarnation Eye, a power of creation and destruction. His descendants, under conditions like polarity unification, could awaken the Reincarnation Eye as well. Unlike the Rinnegan's extreme difficulty, there was a secret technique for synthesizing many Byakugan into a Reincarnation Eye, a technique that ultimately led to the Moon Branch's annihilation. By the time Izanami turned his attention there, only Otsutsuki Toneri should remain. At 3 years old, Izanami had a flash of clarity and abandoned the idea of copying Naruto Uzumaki's or Sasuke Uchiha's talent entries for now. He thought of Toneri. As the last pure-blood descendant of the Moon Branch, Toneri's atavism matched that of Asura and Hagoromo. That purity granted him a sage body. Where Madara only awakened the Rinnegan after fusing with Hashirama's cells and dying of old age, Toneri could evolve his Byakugan into the Reincarnation Eye in a matter of days. Once awakened, he could enter Tenseigan Chakra mode, condense truth-seeking balls, and unleash techniques like the Silver Wheel and Golden Wheel reincarnation explosions, attacks powerful enough to cleave the moon. Toneri's talent and chakra were terrifying, eclipsing even Naruto and Sasuke. If he ever descended to Earth, he would be a walking god. If he brought down the medium to use a giant reincarnation eye, the ninja world would be his, unless Madara and Hashirama were resurrected or the sage intervened. If Toneri had been ruthless enough to steal Hinata's or Hanabi's Byakugan, there would never have been a Shippuden, only the legend of Toneri. Toneri was a Chunibyo shut-in, though. Unless he matured, he wouldn't come down until he convinced himself the world was beyond saving. Izanami knew Toneri had visited Konoha once in childhood, before his father died, and had secretly viewed Hinata through a giant reincarnation eye. He'd fallen in love at first sight, but rather than disrupt her life, Toneri planned to return with an ancient promise to propose once he was mature. By then, Hinata already liked someone else. His feelings were unrequited. Izanami felt no particular sympathy, just curiosity. He estimated the year Toneri had visited was when Hinata turned 3. After that birthday, Hisashi's death in place of his brother slightly altered Hinata's standing in the clan. Her personality developments afterward only deepened Hiyashi's disappointment in his eldest daughter. Hinata's grandest birthday celebration had been her third, so Izanami gambled. He used his only copy slot on Otsutsuki Toneri. He could always get Naruto's or Sasuke's entries later. Toneri's was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. If he missed it, he'd have to wait until 2 years after the end of Shippuden. The data on his light screen confirmed the gamble paid off. Toneri hadn't just strolled outside the Hyuga compound on Hinata's 3rd birthday. He'd wandered aimlessly around Konoha all year. Appearances were deceptive, but talent entries weren't. If you could see the bubbles that marked someone's talent, No disguise, short of being a puppet or invisible, could hide them from Izanami. With persistence and caution, he finally spotted the blind Toneri and his father in the crowd at Hinata's third birthday. That same day, the Kumogakure envoy had arrived in Konoha, an enviable coincidence. If Toneri and his father had stayed until night and dared to try kidnapping Hinata, they would have been finished. Instead, they used the giant reincarnation eye to watch Hinata from afar and quietly left. Toneri himself, born without eyes, didn't have the bloodline limit, Byakugan entry. He had no low-level entries, only a single great red bubble, Otsutsuki bloodline. Izanami had seen that entry on Hyuga members before, but never this color. On Hyuga, the Otsutsuki bloodline entries were at most blue. Toneri's father's was only purple, not even gold. Toneri's bubble, however, glowed a deep red, the highest level Izanami had ever seen. He didn't hesitate. He copied it. What followed were 3 years of defying fate. After his first chakra extraction, Izanami's Chunin aptitude, green, upgraded to Super Kage aptitude, gold. As the name implied, barring an early death and with continued growth, he was on a path to become someone on the level of Hashirama or Madara. If he ever harvested Hinata's or Hanabi's Byakugan and condensed truth-seeking balls, he could reach 6 paths level power. A few months later, a new entry unlocked. All-element constitution, purple. Izanami possessed an all-element constitution like Tobirama, Hiruzen, Orochimaru, and Kakashi. At 5 years old, another entry revealed itself, and it startled him. He activated the Byakugan. Not his eyes changing outwardly all the time, but an active ability. Under the Otsutsuki influence, his eyes were normal in rest, like Uzumaki Himawari's. When he activated the Byakugan, the veins at his temples would bulge and his pupils go white. That realization was a relief. Otherwise, he might have had to wear sunglasses constantly or, like Kakashi in the original story, use colored contacts to hide the change. Chapter 3. Clear goal. 3 red traits unlike Naruto, whose potential had been crippled by the Nine-Tails chakra. Izayoi-kun, who had acquired the Otsutsuki bloodline, possessed not only staggering potential, but also an exceptionally solid foundation. The Hyuga clan's Byakugan lets them see chakra in the meridians, giving them a head start in training chakra control. After awakening his Byakugan, Izayoi-kun also unlocked the chakra control trait. Before he even entered the academy, he could climb trees with his feet, walk on water, and had already mastered the 3-body technique, a B-rank shadow clone, and the lower-level escape techniques his parents left him. Like a prodigy in the mold of Uchiha Itachi, he had graduation-level strength before the Ninja Academy. It was no surprise he topped the entrance exam and was assigned to Class 1A, the same class as Shino. When he arrived in the classroom, most of the students were already seated. Izayoi-kun scanned the room, and his gaze settled on a small girl who had noticed him and looked pleasantly surprised. With a faint smile, he walked straight toward her. The desks were long, seating 3. She sat in the middle with both sides empty. "Yo, we meet again." He sat down beside her, teasing. As expected of the girl who ran away from home, the entrance exam was no trouble for you. Izayoi-kun. The girl couldn't meet his eyes. She lowered her head and fidgeted with her fingers, although her heart was racing with joy. The name Izanami on the list really was the same Izayoi-kun who had helped her years ago. "We're deskmates now. Please take care of me, Hyuga." "No, Hinata-san," he said, smiling as he used her name. Her cheeks and ears flushed bright red. Hinata glanced at him, and when their eyes met, she looked away quickly, barely audibly replying, "Please take care of me, Izayoi-kun." She didn't notice the heat in Izayoi-kun's gaze. To him, 5 colored bubbles hovered over Hinata. One stood out the most, a red one. Byakugan bloodline limit, Byakugan purple, Jonin qualification blue, Otsutsuki bloodline. Chakra control blue. The Byakugan princess trait was the very reason Izayoi-kun had sought her out, and why he had waited that snowy night when Hinata ran away during Hyuga Hisashi's funeral to intercept her and earn her favor. Once he saw that red trait, he realized he could block Uzumaki Naruto, the child of prophecy, and Otsutsuki Toneri, the original claimant. Just as the reincarnations of Asura and Indra hoped to awaken the Rinnegan by taking each other's power and converging 2 extremes, Otsutsuki Toneri and Hinata needed to exchange powers to awaken the reincarnation eye. Given their bloodline purity and Byakugan level, the chance of success was extremely high. In the original timeline, Hinata needed Toneri's chakra to defy fate, an almost impossible condition. So as a mere Byakugan princess, with her Otsutsuki bloodline only blue-ranked, her ceiling was elite jonin at best. Now things could change. Izayoi-kun, who carried an Otsutsuki bloodline at red rank, could potentially help Hinata defy destiny, and Hinata's red trait could in turn let Izayoi-kun gain the reincarnation eye. They were a perfect match. That was why he'd greeted her and then remained quiet. This was only their second meeting. Hinata, only 6, was already learning Gentle Fist and likely struggling against Hyuga Neji, disappointing Hiyashi and retreating inward. 3 years earlier, she hadn't been so timid. She had looked Izayoi-kun in the eye without flinching. Fortunately, Hanabi wasn't grown yet, and Hiyashi hadn't completely given up. He'd started cultivating his second daughter more than his first. A little encouragement could restore Hinata's confidence, but getting close to her would be a challenge. She was the Hyuga heiress, rarely left the compound, and when she did, she was escorted by clan guards in green vests. Being alone with her would be difficult. Izayoi-kun rested his chin on one hand and tapped the desk, thinking. Hinata watched him secretly, admiration rising again. She admired the boy who had dared to wander alone on that snowy night, who spoke and acted with an almost adult composure and had topped the exam. If she could be as good as him, perhaps her father wouldn't be disappointed. Izayoi-kun was the only peer she remembered besides Neji. Even after 3 years, she hadn't forgotten the black-haired, blue-eyed boy with the baby face. She wanted to speak first, but couldn't summon the courage. Izayoi-kun didn't know her thoughts. He came back to his own and focused on his targets, Uzumaki Naruto and Uchiha Sasuke. Each of them also had several bubbles hovering above them, each including a red trait like Hinata's. Uzumaki Naruto's visible traits: Sage's Body, red; Supercog Qualification, Uzumaki Bloodline, purple; Otsutsuki Bloodline, blue. Izayoi-kun didn't see the words Asura or Ninetales in Naruto's trait list, but the level of the Sage's Body and the Uzumaki Bloodline suggested Naruto's Sage's Body was different from the Senju or Uzumaki standard, on par with a pure Otsutsuki bloodline, the kind only Hagoromo Otsutsuki and his son Asura possessed. In addition to those traits, Naruto also had the cheat of carrying half of the Ninetales. By comparison, Uchiha Sasuke's traits looked slightly weaker. Sage's Eye, red; Kaji Level Qualification, purple; Uchiha Bloodline, purple; Otsutsuki Bloodline, blue. An unevolved Byakugan princess is negligible, and similarly, an unevolved Sage's Eye is also insignificant. Without Uchiha Itachi's eyes or a trigger of Indra's chakra, Sasuke's ceiling would be a Kage-level shinobi who would eventually go blind. Only with the Eternal Mangekyo Sharingan, or by activating the true power of the Sage's Eye, Indra's chakra, could his qualification rise to Super Kage. Just as Madara, pitted against Hashirama's Senju strength, could be kept down, Naruto might seem weak now, but once he unleashed his abilities, he could instantly outpace Sasuke. That was the difference talent and cheat abilities made, true across 6 years at the academy, and again through the 3 years of Shippuden. Chapter 4. Does ninjutsu require hand seals? Hello everyone, my name is Iruka Umino, and I will be your homeroom teacher from now on. As the school bell rang, a young man in a green vest stepped into the classroom. From the podium, he introduced himself to Izanami and the others, then smiled and said, "Before class starts, let's introduce ourselves. We'll begin with the student in the first row on the left. My name is..." "Hello everyone, my name is Ino Yamanaka. Please take care of me from now on. My name is Shino Aburame. Uchiha Sasuke. My name is Uzumaki Naruto. Remember this name. I'm going to be Hokage." Each student's introduction showed their personality. The most conspicuous was Uzumaki Naruto, whose brash self-introduction had already earned Iruka's dislike. Since they had just met, Naruto's arrogance didn't draw ridicule from the class yet. When it was Hinata's turn, she stammered softly, "My name is Hinata Hyuga. Please take care of me." Her shyness was a stark contrast to the confident, outgoing Ino. Fortunately, this wasn't an ordinary world. Otherwise, a girl as shy as Hinata might be easy prey for bullying. "Hello, everyone. My name is Izanami." Izanami stood and introduced himself plainly. His face, as attractive as Uchiha Sasuke's, nonetheless drew the attention of several girls. He'd already noticed how early children matured in this world. Feeling those heated gazes, he couldn't help clicking his tongue inwardly. Kids here could be living independently at 3, learning about love and intimacy by 5 or 6, fighting on battlefields before 12, and becoming celebrated heroes by 16 or 17. With such extremes, the label genius carried enormous weight in the Hokage world. After introductions, the class moved to a familiar ritual for Izanami, distributing books. He took his and felt his mouth twitch. Chinese and mathematics were normal enough, but biology, medicine, and chemistry? He suddenly understood why the children here learned about love and relationships so early. Biological and medical subjects were taught at a young age, and such precocity was common. Iruka also handed each student a scroll detailing how to extract chakra. Chakra is a special energy formed by proportionally fusing the physical energy produced by the body's roughly 130 trillion cells and spiritual energy, Iruka explained. It is the key to becoming a ninja. The entrance exam filters for students whose physical and spiritual energy both meet the standards and who thus have a high probability of becoming a ninja. Knowledge and physical training can both increase those energies, he continued. So students who haven't manifested chakra yet must study and train hard. If you still can't demonstrate it by the end of the observation period, you'll be advised to withdraw. At that, some children from ordinary families who hadn't manifested chakra grew visibly nervous. They would likely become Iruka's favorite model students for improvement. Izanami didn't bother to reassure them mentally. You were overthinking it. Although the school didn't overtly divide students into elite and struggling classes, those who made it into the first-year Class 1, apart from clan members, were civilians with excellent aptitude. Izanami glanced around and saw that every student had at least white-tier starting attributes, and many even had green-tier Chunin aptitude. That meant that even if they failed the graduation exam, they would still be as powerful as future genin. Students with green-tier attributes, barring premature death, were likely to become Chunin later. Clan kids like Ino already showed Jonin aptitude, blue. Sakura Haruno's aptitude caught Izanami's eye. Her overall ninja aptitude was only green-tier, Chunin level, but her chakra control talent ranked at purple, comparable to a Kekkei Genkai. With such exquisite chakra control, her ceiling as things stood appeared to be Chunin. Only by changing her fate could she rise higher, potentially into the ranks of the new generation's Sannin. Similarly, Hinata's Byakugan-related powers were clearly potent, but her general aptitude limited her to Jonin unless she altered her fate. Once textbooks and scrolls were handed out, Iruka launched into lessons without giving the students time to relax. Mornings were for academics, afternoons were for physical education. PE included standard exercises and something odd. Students were given pebbles to practice throwing techniques. Basic movement skills, like the 3-body technique, body flicker technique, and hiding in surface were covered, but not kunai and shuriken or taijutsu sparring. The first semester of the first year was clearly about laying a solid foundation, building knowledge and physical fitness. Izanami had come at first, but when he realized there would be no taijutsu sparring at this stage, he stopped bringing his main body to the academy. A shadow clone attended classes while his real body went elsewhere to train. He had acquired an Otsutsuki bloodline at age 3, and with it an enormous reservoir of chakra. Even Kakashi Hatake, who in the original story could produce multiple shadow clones in class at 5 or 6, was inferior to him. Uzumaki Naruto hadn't even learned to extract chakra yet. Izanami's shadow clones surpassed many in both duration and durability, eclipsing those of even renowned users. At an abandoned training ground in the wilderness, Izanami used the transformation technique to appear as a teenager and practiced ninjutsu alone. Wind release, violent wind palm, he called. In the clearing, he mimed hand seals, compressing chakra into wind in his palm, shaping it into a vortex, and then blasting it outward as a gale that kicked up clouds of dust. He faked the hand signs on purpose because he didn't need them. At that stage, aside from auxiliary techniques, like the 3-body technique and shadow clone, Izanami could perform 5-element ninjutsu without any hand seals. There were degrees even within red-tier attributes. The red-tier talent of the Otsutsuki bloodline was beyond Sage Body, the Sage's Eye, or the Byakugan Heiress. Not only was his chakra staggering, his ninjutsu aptitude was absurdly high. Like the Otsutsuki of old before Indra invented hand seals, he could cast five-element ninjutsu without forming signs. Even figures like Senju Hashirama once needed claps and shouts to manifest effects, but Izanami required none of that. That ability wasn't just powerful, it was a trump card. Opponents who waited for him to finish hand seals would be caught off guard when he cast ninjutsu without them. Chapter 5. Izayoi's Invitation, Summer Vacation. Before he knew it, the first semester was nearly over. For first-year students, classes had been mostly culture and physical training. Every day was study, exercise, or chakra extraction. Ninja were rare, getting in had been hard, and graduation tests were brutal. Graduation itself wasn't really a finish line. Without a Jonin's recognition, you could be sent back for re-education, and the elimination rate was astonishing. That was just for genin moving up from apprentice rank. Above them were chunin, special jonin, and full jonin. None of that mattered to Izayoi and Shino. Except for the first 2 weeks, Izayoi hadn't used his main body to attend school. He only came in person when a taijutsu duel was expected. The real reason he'd enrolled was for Hinata, Naruto, and Sasuke, more precisely to bring out their red entries. Before they graduated from the academy, Izayoi wanted to draw out at least 1 or 2 of those red entries. Once they graduated, meeting and fighting them would be much harder, not because of a difference in strength, but because opportunities would be scarce. In the original timeline, the next chance they met after graduation was the Chunin exams. Graduation ended in March, and the exams began July 1st, important annual dates. There was that long, critical season in between. When the dismissal bell rang, another day ended. The students who had spent the afternoon in physical education still buzzed with energy. Izayoi-kun, want to play ninja games with us? Izayoi, are you going home with us? Some left school to go home. Others stayed, forming small groups. Izayoi got lots of invitations. He was popular and influential in his class. Even though only his shadow clone attended school, and his real targets were only Hinata, Naruto, and Sasuke, he wasn't cold to others. He smiled at everyone and declined politely when needed. Today was no different. Faced with both boys' and girls' invitations, Izayoi's shadow clone clasped its hands and offered an embarrassed smile. Sorry, I already made plans with someone else. Next time, I promise, next time. He's taken again? Izayoi-kun really is popular. Then next time, let's all play together. The classmates looked disappointed, but didn't push it. After leaving school, Izayoi ducked into an alley and dispelled the clone. Its memories and fatigue flowed back into his main body. He sat at home, digesting the day's experiences and letting training exhaustion settle in. The holiday's almost here, he murmured. Time to start putting the plan in motion. On July 20th, after morning classes, it was lunchtime. Some students who lived nearby went home for lunch. Others brought bentos to eat in the classroom or outside. Izayoi usually went home because his clone attended class, but today he came in person with a bento and sat to eat with Hinata in the classroom. Over the past 3 months, they'd become friends. They weren't at the point of sharing everything, but they knew each other's interests and a few small secrets. Hinata liked pressing flowers, and she'd already discovered her desk mate was actually a shadow clone. When she first realized it, she'd opened her small mouth in surprise. Her eyes widened and her admiration for Izayoi only deepened. Although the 3 bodies technique wasn't even taught at the academy, he'd already mastered the shadow clone technique. Impressive. While they ate, Izayoi asked, Hinata, the holiday starts tomorrow. What are you planning to do? I'll probably train at home, she replied softly. Do you want to train with me? He offered. See, can I? Hinata stared at him in surprise, then frowned and lowered her eyes. No, father won't let me go out alone. Since the kidnapping incident, she had to be accompanied by a guard whenever she left the house. And now, as a student who shared a class with an Uchiha, she felt pressure to train harder for her clan's honor. No worries, Izayoi grinned. I'm just asking if you want to come out and train with me during the holiday. Hinata's voice was barely a whisper as she lowered her head to eat. Good, I'll help you tomorrow. Izayoi leaned in close and whispered the details of his plan into her ear. The warm breath against her skin made Hinata's cheeks and ears flush red. The chopsticks in her hand trembled. It was the closest she'd ever been to him, and 3 months of quiet composure melted in an instant. She didn't faint. Hinata wasn't quite that melodramatic, but her mind went blank and she forgot what he'd said. "Remember, be more proactive tomorrow, or my plan will get exposed," Izayoi warned. "Oh." Hinata nodded in a daze, adorably clumsy. "Izayoi-kun, what did you say just now?" Izayoi didn't answer with words. With a quick flick, he tapped her forehead, then repeated the plan, watching as comprehension returned to her face. Hinata clutched her forehead and blinked, her eyes brightening. The next day, the academy entered the 40-day summer vacation. Izayoi left his house and waited in an alley. With a soft pop, like a balloon bursting, a sound echoed, and a blonde-haired girl in a hat jogged out, her hair still visible beneath it, heading straight for the Hyuga compound. Any Class 1 student who saw her would recognize the figure as Ino Yamanaka. "Hello, I'm Ino Yamanaka. I'm here to pick up Hinata. We arranged to go out together yesterday," Izayoi said with a sweet smile, disguised as Ino to the gatekeepers. The two guards exchanged looks. "Please wait a moment." One of them scrutinized the girl, then bowed and returned into the compound. A short while later, he reappeared, and behind him came a small girl in a white windbreaker, Hinata. She jogged up with a shy smile and greeted Izayoi, still in his Ino guise. The plan was working perfectly. Hinata was out. Chapter 6. Izayoi-kun's plan. "Izayoi-kun, this is amazing! We did it!" Hinata could barely contain her excitement as they left the Hyuga estate, her voice trembling with joy. "Calm down," Izayoi-kun said with a smile. "Be careful your father didn't send anyone to follow us and listen in." At his words, Hinata hurriedly covered her mouth and glanced around, adorably nervous. "Let's go. I'll take you somewhere," he added. Not certain whether guards really were tailing them, Izayoi-kun didn't cancel his transformation technique yet. He led Hinata off Central Street toward an abandoned training ground in the woods. Shadow clone technique. Once they were tucked into the trees, Izayoi created a shadow clone, which disappeared almost instantly. Then he canceled the transformation technique. Hinata's face lit up. "So no one's following us?" "That's right, no one's following us," he confirmed with a grin. "Later I'll teach you a technique," Izayoi-kun said. "Practice it at home, and if your father sees it, he probably won't stop you from going out anymore." Hearing that, Hinata's joy deepened. Izayoi's plan had been to transform into Ino Yamanaka and invite Hinata out. If he'd invited her as himself, it would have been impossible. Hinata would never have been allowed. At best, the trip would have been canceled. At worst, Hyuga Neji might have been ordered to keep an eye on them, or Izayoi could have been moved to a different seat, or even another class. In a world where daimyo and nobles ruled, class divisions were harsh. Hinata was the young lady of a prominent clan. Izayoi was an orphan commoner with no surname. There was a gulf between them. If Izayoi had been a girl, a friendship might have been more acceptable, but as a boy, he was a threat to the Hyuga elders' plans to control association and to keep the bloodline limit secret. Unless he became extremely valuable, someone the clan could gain by recruiting, no one would allow him near Hinata. Only if he were a hero like Uzumaki Naruto, a savior who'd won the whole village's admiration, could he hope to marry into the main family. So for now, he had to resort to small tricks. Ino Yamanaka was the young lady of the Yamanaka clan, part of the new generation's Ino Shikacho. Even if her personal combat skill wasn't outstanding, Ino could become a powerful figure through her family's mind techniques and hold real influence in intelligence work. If anyone among the new generation's Shino group had the right to be friends with Hinata, it was Ino. Disguised as her, Izayoi had a much better chance of inviting Hinata out without guards tailing them. He wasn't naive. If his strength grew too quickly, the gap between him and Hinata would widen and make it harder to trigger the red entry. Still, he wanted to do what he could now. Once the first major exam came and he could claim a top spot, he would have more confidence. Compared to Naruto and Sasuke's flashy entries, Izayoi was even more eager to provoke Hinata's red entry. He believed that once he awakened the reincarnation eye, he would have no more reservations. Until then, he had to grab opportunities like this holiday. They reached the abandoned training ground. Izayoi looked at Hinata. "Have you learned the three-body technique?" "Not yet," Hinata said. "Father is strict. He told me to focus on the gentle fist. Only when the school teaches other ninjutsu can I practice them in my spare time. In that case, I'm not going to teach you the three-body technique, Izayoi said with a smile. I'll teach you something that improves chakra control. It will make practicing gentle fist, learning shadow clone, or even the body flicker technique much easier. Hinata's eyes widened. Izayoi-kun, you're going to teach me the shadow clone technique? That's part of it, he nodded. From now on, my main body will rarely go to class. You can come here whenever, practice the shadow clone with me. Send a clone to class while your real body trains here with me. The idea tempted Hinata immensely. She'd already suspected Izayoi was using a shadow clone at school. She didn't want to fall further behind him. But her father would never allow her to learn such jutsu in front of the family, let alone the shadow clone. Still, the chance to secretly come to the woods every day, to train with Izayoi, to have both friendship and freedom, moved her deeply. Izayoi could tell by her expression what she was thinking. Come here, I'll show you how to control chakra better, he said. He walked to a massive tree and formed the hand seal. When you form hand seals, gather chakra under the soles of your feet, then overcome the fear. Like this. Hinata watched, jaw-dropping, as he put his right foot on the trunk, then his left. Both feet left the ground, and his body became perfectly horizontal. He began to walk up the tree, moving as if on flat ground until he reached the top. Turning, he planted himself at a right angle against the trunk and smiled down at her. Walking up trees with your feet, this is the first technique I'm showing you. So amazing, Hinata breathed. He climbed down, grinning. That's only the first stage. The harder one is walking on water with your feet. As long as you learn these two things, the three-body technique, shadow clone, or the body flicker will be much easier for you. Can I really learn them? Hinata asked, her confidence shaky. Don't underestimate yourself. You're the young lady of the Hyuga clan. Izayoi-kun patted her shoulder. Go on, try it. Don't be afraid of falling. I'll catch you. He added, half teasing, but if you fall too far behind, I won't wait for you. That playful barb steeled her resolve. She nodded emphatically. Okay. She had already disappointed her father once. She wouldn't disappoint Izayoi-kun again. And she wasn't about to lose her only friend. Chapter 7. Hinata's Changes. Hinata stood beneath the large tree and formed an unfinished hand sign with both hands. She circulated chakra through her body and gathered it at the soles of her feet, just as Izanami had shown her. She lifted her right foot and stepped onto the trunk. Immediately, she felt the soles of her shoes cling to the bark, as if glued. Relief washed over her, and she lifted her left foot to follow. Like Izanami had done moments before, Hinata's body floated horizontally in the air. Holding her breath, she took the third step. Ah! Her expression snapped into shock. For an instant, the contact at her feet failed, and her body tipped toward the ground. Two arms caught her and steadied her. Izanami laughed softly. Don't be afraid. I told you I'd catch you. Izayoi-kun, I'm sorry, Hinata mumbled, lowering her head as if she had let him down. Why are you apologizing to me? Izanami reached out and patted her shoulder, encouraging. It's normal to fail. The fact that you managed to stick with both feet on your first try is already amazing. When I first practiced, it took me more than a dozen tries. That was a lie. Izanami had succeeded on his first try and had even walked many steps. In the original talent listings, neither Uzumaki Naruto nor Uchiha Sasuke had chakra control, but Izanami and Hinata both had it at the blue level. With that kind of talent, tree climbing and walking on water, even medical ninjutsu, sensing techniques, sealing jutsu, and barrier ninjutsu become far easier to learn. Using the gentle fist to inject chakra into an opponent is itself a form of chakra control. With enough chakra and a good teacher, Hinata should learn tree climbing quickly. Keep going, Izanami said. I believe you'll reach the top soon. Okay. Encouraged, Hinata's confidence rose. She formed the hand signs again, gathered chakra into her feet, stepped onto the trunk, and this time her body settled horizontally without trembling. Perhaps it was Izanami's steady presence that made the difference. She didn't hold her breath and took the third step naturally. The loss of control that had troubled her before didn't happen. She kept chakra balanced in both feet and the soles of her shoes clung firmly to the tree. Step 4, 5, 6. By the 8th step, she was steady. On the 9th, her rhythm faltered. The chakra in her feet wavered, and she began to fall. Surprisingly, Hinata didn't cry out. Instead, she felt a tiny thrill. As expected, she didn't hit the hard ground. She fell into a warm embrace. Izanami caught her with both hands, lifting her in a princess carry. He looked down at her and praised her unabashedly. "Amazing, Hinata. You reached that height on your second try. You truly are a genius." Hinata laughed, not with embarrassment, but with genuine joy. She had received more praise in a single day than she had in years. The acceptance felt new and intoxicating. In this version of herself, she hadn't yet become the timid, defeat-prone girl of the original story. She felt motivated, her eyes sparkling. She even spoke up, surprising herself. "Izayoi-kun, put me down. I want to try again." "All right." Izanami watched her closely. Seeing Hinata grow bolder made him pleased in his own way. That the heiress of a distinguished family could be so timid in the original timeline showed how pressured her life had been. Since he had come into this world and decided to intervene with Uzumaki Naruto and Otsutsuki Toneri, Izanami intended to change her, if not into the delinquent older sister from the limited Tsukuyomi, then at least into someone who wouldn't let her Otsutsuki genes go to waste. He intended to start with her personality and cultivate the person he wanted. Hinata's natural gifts were undeniable. Among the girls in the Konoha 12, she was the only one from a prominent family and the only one with the Byakugan, one of the 3 great eye techniques. All she lacked was confidence. Once that returned, she would shine. Tree climbing and water walking don't demand huge reserves of chakra. What matters is control. That control comes either from endless practice or from talent. Naruto and Sasuke had earned theirs through relentless training. Sakura had it by nature. Izanami and Hinata were the latter type. Hinata's steady progress on her second try proved it. She didn't regress. On her third attempt, she managed over a dozen steps before falling again. Each time, Izanami caught her without fail. By the fourth attempt, she didn't fall at all. She climbed to the top of the tree. "Izayoi-kun, I did it," she called down, breathless with pride. "Amazing," Izanami answered, giving her a thumbs up. "You reached the top on your fourth try. Hinata, you're stronger than I am." Hinata laughed again, basking in the praise. With Izanami's guidance, she felt things she never did with her father. When Hiyashi taught her gentle fist at home, it always came with tension, never praise. Even when she completed his assignments, she could expect nothing but criticism for not living up to her cousin. With Izanami, the encouragement she had always wanted felt natural. The calm in his instruction and the joy he offered cleansed something in her, and she found herself enjoying training. She walked down from the treetop as if descending a flat path and landed gracefully in front of him. Her eyes were bright with expectation. "Izayoi-kun, is water walking the same as tree climbing?" "It's similar, but harder." Izanami nodded. "Tree climbing only requires sticking to the trunk. Water flows. To walk on water, you need much finer control." "I won't teach you right now," he added with a smile. "Try it at home with a bathtub or a water tank. When your chakra reserves grow a bit more, I'll teach you real water walking and the shadow clone technique." Hinata nodded eagerly. Seeing her so receptive, Izanami revealed his next plan. "Next, I'll teach you taijutsu sparring. And while we're at it, let me experience the Hyuga clan's gentle fist." Okay. Innocent and trusting, Hinata didn't suspect his true purposes. She had sparred with her cousin many times at home and found nothing odd about practicing taijutsu now, even though it wasn't part of her school lessons. Obediently, she agreed, ready for the next step. Chapter 8. Level Gap. The Use of Points. Throughout the summer vacation, Izanami trained with Hinata. Every day he first checked Ino Yamanaka's location, used the transformation technique to take her form, and then invited Hinata out. They met at an abandoned training ground to practice tree climbing, water walking, or sparring taijutsu. Over the summer, Hinata changed astonishingly, not just in strength, but in temperament and confidence. Hiyashi Hyuga was the first to notice. When he learned Hinata had been practicing water walking, he realized her outings weren't mere play. He also discovered someone was covertly watching Hinata and her companion. Izanami, far from hiding, deliberately probed Hiyashi's attitude. One day he found an excuse to demonstrate his water walking to Hinata, then showed her the shadow clone technique and some low-level wind release. He completely outclassed her in taijutsu sparring. The next day, Izanami returned in Ino's form and went to the Hyuga residence to invite Hinata out. From the way Hinata appeared, he could tell Hiyashi tacitly approved. For the head of such an esteemed clan to allow these meetings was a statement. Izanami's identity was no secret to the Konoha clans. An orphan from a ninja family, he had already learned tree climbing and water walking, skills not even taught at the academy, before finishing 3 semesters of his first year. He could use the shadow clone technique and low-level wind release. With that talent and chakra reserves, he was undeniably a genius commoner in this era. Letting Hinata train with someone like him would motivate her. The results were obvious. Hinata practiced water walking at home, and her whole demeanor improved. Hiyashi, while a little disappointed in Hinata's earlier performance and still not yet aware of Hanabi's talent, could only be pleased by the progress. He had no desire to break them apart. First, they were still children, and their relationship should remain a simple friendship. Second, in his eyes, a Hyuga marriage with Izanami was impossible. Byakugan could not be passed outside the clan. Izanami was merely a tool to help Hinata improve. Hiyashi would continue to observe their relationship and intervene if it looked like either would be harmed by hopes of something more. Only someone truly exceptional, like the 4th Hokage Minato Namikaze, might change that outcome. Neither Izanami nor Hinata knew any of this. With Hiyashi not forbidding their meetings, Izanami relaxed and trained Hinata hard. He taught her the 3-body technique and chakra control methods and tried to draw out her red trait through relentless taijutsu sparring. He went easy at first, so she could adapt, but after a few days he fought seriously and beat her mercilessly, then healed her afterward. Izanami's mother in this life had been a medical ninja. He had inherited her basic medical ninjutsu scrolls and the medical genius aptitude. He used that to patch Hinata up after their matches. Neji may have resented Hinata during sparring when Hiyashi was watching, but he dared not harm her. Izanami, however, really fought, no mercy. Hinata grew used to being bested and then healed. Her combat experience rose quickly, her attacks became more decisive, and she learned to inject chakra more brutally into an opponent's body. She would not be the overly gentle Hinata from before, the one who couldn't bring herself to hurt her younger sister and thus lost to Hanabi. Those obvious improvements made Hiyashi fully accept Izanami's role. Izanami gained a lot too. Through constant sparring with Hinata, he picked up aspects of the Hyuga's gentle fist. After probing Hiyashi's stance, he persuaded Hinata to secretly bring out a human acupoint diagram and a gentle fist scroll. Izanami already understood human acupoints and the technique of injecting chakra into a body. He wasn't interested in mastering the 8 trigrams palms, but he was very interested in the method of sealing an enemy's chakra flow by striking acupoints, useful for disabling opponents in a fight. Although he didn't extract Hinata's red trait this summer, he did pull 2 traits. The first was the blue trait chakra control, which he already possessed. A prompt sounded in his mind. Ding! You have obtained the talent trait chakra control blue, which overlaps with your own talent trait. Merge or decompose. Izanami chose to merge. Chakra control stayed blue, not turning purple, but he felt a clear improvement in his chakra control. Only then did he understand how Sakura Haruno, thanks to superior chakra control, could surpass someone who had practiced gentle fist since childhood, or Shizune, who had studied under Tsunade, in just 3 years. There is a gulf between blue and purple chakra control. Merging 2 blue traits doesn't reach purple. Purple chakra control, however, allows one to learn advanced medical ninjutsu, senju-style chakra bursts, and high-difficulty techniques in a short time. The second trait he extracted was a purple trait, Bloodline Limit Byakugan. But bloodlines are bloodlines, and Hinata remained Hinata. If Izanami didn't already have a compatible bloodline, the trait would at best grant him a pair of Byakugan, no guarantee of the Byakugan's purity. Izanami chose to decompose the trait. Merging would raise his Byakugan's purity, but it couldn't awaken anything like the reincarnation eye. The Otsutsuki had sacrificed their branch family's Byakugan to create the reincarnation eye. The purity there far exceeded the Hyuga's. To evolve anything by merging Byakugan would require an unknown, enormous number of traits. Merging these 2 would be a waste. When he decomposed Bloodline Limit Byakugan, purple, Izanami gained over 1,000 points and his status panel updated. Talent traits, Otsutsuki Bloodline Red, Kaji Level Aptitude Gold, Bloodline Limit Byakugan Purple, All Attribute Physique Purple, Medical Genius Blue, plus, Chakra Control Blue. Points, the plus signs after Medical Genius and Chakra Control showed they were upgradable. That was the purpose of points. Chapter 9. Rejected. Izayoi Izanami had learned by the age of 3 that points could only be earned by dismantling entries. Back then, to reasonably insert himself near the Hyuga children, he'd befriended a group and played ninja games with them. Because he was so popular, some kids resented him and things sometimes ended in fights. Several of those children ended up with white aptitude entries for ninja skills. When those entries appeared, the system prompt offered the choice, fuse or dismantle. Dismantling those white entries gave Izanami 25 points total. Each white entry produced a random single-digit number of points. Now dismantling a purple entry produced a 4-digit haul, and blue entries could be upgraded. How many points did it take to upgrade a blue entry? Curious, Izanami clicked the plus sign beside Chakra Control. The panel updated immediately. Host. Izanami Talent Entries. Otsutsuki Bloodline Red, Super Kaj Aptitude Gold, Bloodline Limit Byakugan Purple, All Attribute Physique Purple, Chakra Control Medical Genius Blue, points 793. Chakra Control had jumped from blue to purple. The plus sign next to Medical Genius vanished and his points dropped by 999. Entry tiers go white, green, blue, purple, gold, red, he muttered. Dismantling white yields single digits, dismantling purple yields 4 digits, and upgrading blue cost a 3-digit extreme number. Is that cost fixed or random? He guessed it might be fixed. White, green 9 points, green, blue 99, blue, purple 999, purple, gold 999, gold, red 99,999, red 999,999 for whatever lay beyond. He didn't know for sure. He had no low-level entries to test, and no spare points to waste experimenting. Even if he did, he wouldn't blow points on minor upgrades. Except for special entries like Byakugan and Chakra Control, he had no interest in upgrading anything below red. What mattered was awakening the Reincarnation Eye. With that and sufficiently honed dimension-reducing attacks, he could reach 6 paths level power. A pair of eyes would carry him through to the final battles of Shippuden. Points were better saved for the Otsutsuki bloodline. Another upgrade could raise its purity to rival the alien Otsutsuki clan. It might even spawn different colored Rinnegan, or grant abilities like Karma or Divine Arts. For now, those were only speculations. It was too early to count on them. September 1st arrived, and the Ninja Academy began its second semester. This term, Izanami finally attended in person, but only for the afternoon sessions. Mornings remained cultural classes. Afternoons added physical education, shuriken throwing, and a taijutsu sparring class. Iruka Umino paired opponents at random for sparring, and Izanami didn't get matched with Uzumaki Naruto, Uchiha Sasuke, or Hinata. Izanami tried to request a match with Sasuke. Iruka hesitated, then shook his head. Taijutsu sparring doesn't allow special treatment, he said. It's to teach you that an opponent can be equal, weaker, or stronger. You must learn to adapt to different kinds of fights, to grow through tough battles, to savor victory, and to learn from defeat. I understand, Iruka-sensei, Izanami replied, and didn't press the issue further. He planned to challenge Sasuke after school instead. Sasuke's answer, though, made him wince. Sasuke, want to spar? He asked. Sorry, I'm not interested. I still need to go home and train. Sasuke, not yet the avenger of future rumor, was less aloof than in legend, but he still refused without hesitation. He hurried home with an expectant look. Training with his brother came first. After the Nine Tails rampage, the Uchiha compound had been relocated from Central Street to near the Nanga River. Sasuke hadn't mastered the body flicker yet, and took time getting home from the academy. He didn't have time for Izanami and left without looking back. Izanami didn't bother trying to provoke the Uchiha. He also decided against challenging Uzumaki Naruto. Naruto's overall academic score in the first semester had been the worst in his grade. He could barely pronounce chakra correctly. Picking a public fight with a known bottom ranker could attract unwanted attention from the Anbu and higher authorities like Hiruzen Sarutobi or Danzo Shimura. Hiruzen might be curious. Danzo might suspect Izanami knew something or was a pawn approaching Naruto. That would invite precautions and make Izanami's situation awkward and constraining, precisely what he wanted to avoid. So for now, his targets remained Hinata and Sasuke. Rejected by Sasuke, he let it go. It was already September of Konoha year 54. Only 3 months remained in the year. Next year would bring the clan massacre at the hands of the filial son. When Sasuke became the Avenger, he wouldn't refuse a challenge again. The next day, Izanami still attended classes in person, but didn't request Sasuke nor confront him after school. Being matched with Sasuke or Naruto would be useful, but the other classmates were valuable too. Aside from those two, the class included the new generation of Inoshika Cho and the sensing students. Nearly everyone had at least a white ninja aptitude entry. Dismantling white entries still netted single-digit points, and among the rookies, there were blue, purple, even gold and red entries. Any one of those appearing would be a huge gain. He wasn't sure whether shadow clone techniques could produce entries, so he made sure not to miss the afternoon sessions. Chapter 10. Gentle on the outside, strong on the inside. Izayoi bursts with pride. December 21st, Konoha, year 54. Unbeknownst to most, the second semester had already come to an end. The first-year students had changed noticeably over the past months. In the first semester, they'd only had cultural classes and physical education, with no real combat experience, so they were no different from when they first entered the academy. The addition of taijutsu sparring in the second semester, however, forced them to grow through pain and shrug off some of their childishness. There was a downside. Some students began to see violence as a way to solve problems. Fights, mutual assaults, and bullying broke out at the slightest disagreement, and the academy's teachers often let it slide. In their eyes, the weak weren't fit to be shinobi. Better for them to drop out and live ordinary lives than to be killed on missions after graduation. As a result, every class had its share of underachievers trying to pick on the top students. Think of Uchiha Itachi's era, Hyuga Neji, Uchiha Sasuke. They all shared a pattern: handsome, genius-level ability, cold personalities, and wildly popular with the girls. They refused to join cliques, kept to themselves, and that lone wolf attitude made many other boys resentful and eager to teach them a lesson. But every time the bullies tried, they were soundly beaten. That sting of humiliation, losing despite numbers, hurt far worse than the bruises. Afterward, they were ostracized by girls, taunted by the victim's supporters, and even reprimanded by upperclassmen. Their resentment only deepened, sometimes spreading to the whole clan of the student they'd failed to bully. On this snowy day, the flakes finally stopped falling. Hinata, now allowed out freely, didn't need Izayoi to disguise himself as Ino to invite her anymore. She hurried off the Hyuga compound to meet him at their usual spot. She wore a white snowman suit with a red scarf tied around her neck, her face a little rosy from the cold, round and adorable with a touch of baby fat. At Izayoi's suggestion, she'd been growing her hair for over half a year. It now brushed her shoulders, tied into twin pigtails with the plan to let it grow to her waist. Wanting to avoid drawing attention, she waited in the open space outside the academy instead of knocking on Izayoi's door. Is that one of Neji's clan? The white eyes. No doubt about it. Let's go teach her a lesson. 3 boys who looked a year or two older scurried over and surrounded Hinata, grins full of malice on their faces. Do you need something? Hinata asked in a soft voice. She wasn't looking down out of fear, just watching them with a puzzled expression. That stare, just like that, Neji, one boy sneered. What are you looking at, Byakugan freak? You've offended me. Kneel and apologize right now. Hinata tilted her head, bewildered. Are you Neji Nisan's friends? She asked quietly when she heard Neji's name. Friends? Another boy barked. We're his enemies. Kneel and shout I'm sorry and apologize on Neji's behalf, or we'll beat you up. The third boy demanded, reaching toward Hinata's shoulder to force her down and humiliate a Hyuga girl. His hand stretched out, and Hinata's expression shifted. Her small gloved hand shot out, index and middle fingers extended, and she jabbed the boy's chest with lightning speed. The first boy screamed and collapsed, clutching his chest. Before the others could react, Hinata's fingers flicked twice more. One by one, the other boys went down, wailing and rubbing their chests. The pain went deep. It didn't ease no matter how much they pressed at their clothes. Faced with Hinata's calm, unyielding look, they saw something in her eyes, an echo of Hyuga Neji's same strength and coldness. Terror turned to tears, and they scrambled away, fleeing in panic. Hinata blinked, tilting her head. She hadn't even used chakra, so why were they crying? Were they really enemies of Neji-Nisan? Applause broke the confusion. Izayoi, also dressed in a white snowman suit, walked over with a smile. "Hinata, that was cool," he said, giving her a thumbs up. "When it comes to malicious people, you have to act decisively. If you let them escalate, they only get worse." Hinata nodded obediently, beaming. Watching her, Izayoi felt a rush of pride. In the original timeline, Hinata had been bullied repeatedly, an absurd state for a dignified girl from the Hyuga clan, especially one already studying Gentle Fist. To be brought to tears despite that training suggested a deeper problem. Now, though, she had made the bullies cry. The transformation had worked. Through repeated confrontation and training, Hinata's personality had shifted. She was still gentle, but no longer weak. She wouldn't sacrifice herself to please others. She acted decisively, and her counterattacks had become instinctive. Unlike the loud, delinquent leader figure from the limited Tsukuyomi scenario, this Hinata was outwardly mild, but inwardly strong. Doing this in just half a year filled Izayoi with satisfaction. If he'd waited until Hyuga Hiyashi or Hyuga Neji had broken her spirit, changing her would have been much harder. Hiyashi should consider himself lucky. Hinata's newfound freedom to go out was the best reward. "Let's go train," Izayoi said. "Okay," Hinata answered, and the two of them, still in their snowman suits, headed to the abandoned training ground. Chapter 11. The Real White-Eyed Princess. Thump, thump, thump. On a patch of snow in the forest, rapid, continuous impacts echoed through the trees. Two small figures in snowman suits moved across the surface, oddly not sinking into the drift, but stepping firmly on top of it, trading blows. The black-haired, white-eyed girl's hands were covered in white gloves, her fingers wreathed in blue chakra as she lunged at the boy opposite her with a sharp cry. The black-haired, blue-eyed boy seemed to anticipate her attacks, always meeting her by striking the back of her wrist with his own hand just before her fingers could pierce the suit and her chakra reach his skin. After deflecting her strikes, he'd counter with a palm, a straight punch, or a kick that sent her tumbling into the snow. Each time she was hit, she stifled a groan, her small face contorted with pain. Still, she scrambled back up and resumed the assault, ignoring the aches and the blood at the corner of her mouth. They did not stop until the boy finally said, "All right, that's enough." Hinata sank to the ground, breathing hard, sweat mixing with the cold and blood darkening the torn fabric of her suit to reveal the clothes beneath. Izanami, whose own white snowman suit was equally ragged, removed it and knelt beside her, applying basic medical jutsu. He couldn't be certain simple treatment would heal every hidden injury, and he couldn't check for internal damage now, but he trusted that Hyuga Hiyashi would ensure a proper examination eventually. The Hyuga clan had excellent medical ninja. Any concealed ailment would be found and treated. And if Hiyashi didn't act, Izanami had other plans. Once he awakened the reincarnation eye, he would gain yin-yang release like the Rinnegan and could use it to regulate Hinata's body himself. That possibility made him feel no guilt for the brutal training. When the basic treatment was done, Izanami smiled and said, "Let's go ice fishing later. We'll have grilled fish tonight." Hinata's eyes lit up and she nodded enthusiastically. "Okay." Izanami's knowledge of the Hokage world came almost entirely from TV anime. He hadn't read the manga or played the games, and what he knew beyond short clips was limited. He didn't know if the manga mentioned Hinata's appetite, but the anime had a scene where she dominated a ramen-eating contest, and that was enough for the internet to declare her a great eater. Curious, Izanami once took her fishing to see for himself. He'd watched quietly as she ate, discovering she could easily out-eat him 2 or 3 to 1. He was pleased. A large appetite meant strong digestion, more nutrients absorbed, better cell health and stamina, translating to larger chakra reserves in the future. The stronger Hinata became, the more likely she'd earn a red status entry. Knowing she had this advantage, Izanami never let her waste it. After training, he'd take her hunting or fishing until she was full. At first, Hinata tried to behave ladylike around him, but she soon realized Izanami always laid out plenty of food as if he had already discovered her secret. She stopped holding back and began to eat freely. She even looked forward to training. She didn't know her family had quietly stopped serving individual portions and prepared more food at home, assuming it was for a younger sister. Izanami remained blissfully unaware of that detail too. All he knew was that with his help, and the tacit concern of Hyuga Hiyashi, Hinata's destiny in this life had shifted. Her strength and confidence would not follow the same path as in the original story. With a solid foundation and Izanami's chakra support, she might even awaken the reincarnation eye herself one day. Then she would be the true Byakugan princess. Time moved differently depending on the hour. Studying made it drag, but holiday leisure made it fly. Winter break had ended, and Konoha was beginning its 55th year. First-year students started their third semester. Sixth years faced graduation. After 2 semesters of training, the new students had completed their initial transformation. Those who had stayed at the school already possessed chakra and had adapted to the academic and practical demands. So in the third semester, the Ninja Academy officially introduced the 3-body technique, along with the Konoha body flicker technique and the hiding in surface technique. Survival exercises were added to practical lessons to train information gathering and the application of these movement techniques. Aside from the 3-body technique, the basics weren't difficult. When Naruto had first appeared in the original story, he couldn't use the clone jutsu well, but he could pull off the body flicker and hide on surfaces to prank Chunin. None of that posed any trouble for Izanami. The practical classes still centered on taijutsu duels. There were no kunai combats or anything goes free-for-alls. Except for afternoons spent sparring, Izanami still avoided attending school with his main body. Chapter 12. The steady Izayoi finally matched with the Destiny Child. March arrived, and the third semester was winding down. From this month on, Izayoi-kun began attending more classes in person. Not only did his real body take his afternoon classes, but even his morning cultural lessons were attended by him. March wasn't just graduation month for the 6th graders. It was also the month of the big annual exams for the other grades. Before the semester ended, there would be an important test whose results, combined with quiz and pop test scores from the 3 terms, would form each student's comprehensive score. The school would then pick the student with the highest comprehensive score from the entire grade as the valedictorian. To stand out among dozens or even hundreds of students, many of them disciples of the great ninja clans, and become the top student of a grade was a dazzling achievement. For a clan disciple, it meant being the outstanding heir of the new generation. For someone from an ordinary family, it marked them as a prodigy surpassing the clan heirs. These valedictorians were prominent figures at the Ninja Academy. Izayoi-kun had no intention of letting anyone else take that title. Their generation was especially competitive. The major clan's disciples were all heirs, so surpassing them to become valedictorian carried far more significance than in other years. Winning that title and proving his talent would make it all the easier for Izayoi-kun to approach Hinata without resistance. With Izayoi-kun's current strength, becoming valedictorian was no real challenge. Even without his true body present, a shadow clone could dominate. Still, he showed up in person because he knew Konoha was running turbulent undercurrents. In Konoha year 55, when Shino was 7, a shocking event had rocked the ninja world. The Uchiha clan, long the top noble family in Konoha, and after the Senju's decline, the foremost clan in the ninja world, had been annihilated by a 13-year-old boy. That boy was the son of the clan head, Uchiha Itachi, who after that feat became the youngest S-rank rogue ninja in history. Only a few people knew the Uchiha weren't wiped out by Itachi alone. There had been involvement from Konoha's higher-ups, shadows, and assistance from outsiders. Izayoi-kun was one of the few who knew this secret. At that time, the ninja world's most obsessed admirer, Uchiha Obito, could slip into Konoha at will using Kamui and wander the village. To avoid attracting his attention, or that of Black Zetsu lurking in the shadows, Izayoi-kun slowed his training and stopped taking Hinata to the abandoned training grounds until the Uchiha incident settled. It was better to be safe. Hinata was the eldest daughter of the main branch, and her Byakugan, unmarked by the caged bird curse, would be priceless on the black market. After all, Ao, with only one Byakugan, had become an elite jonin of the Hidden Mist and was even on Konoha's Golden Wanted list. Who knew if Obito or someone else wouldn't suddenly target Hinata's Byakugan? Izayoi-kun, having already caused a butterfly effect, wasn't going to gamble on villains' goodwill. March 20th. Students from 1st to 5th grade took their annual exams before the 6th graders' graduation assessments. Izayoi-kun arrived at the Ninja Academy early that morning, but Hinata was already there. After confirming their secret signal and realizing he was the real Izayoi, she smiled faintly and said softly, "Izayoi-kun, good luck." Good luck to both of us," he replied with a grin, leaning in to whisper, "Let's aim for 1st and 2nd. Hinata pictured them ranking 1st and 2nd on the results board and nodded, eyes full of longing. In the past, she hadn't cared for rankings, but now she didn't want to lose to anyone except Izayoi-kun. She believed she had the strength to fight for 2nd place. The morning exam was cultural studies. Although the three-body technique had been taught that semester, the school didn't assess it. Not all 6th graders could use it. Some graduation exams only randomly tested one of the three-body technique's forms. A newly graduated genin who could perform a C-rank 5 elements ninjutsu already had enough chakra to impress a jonin instructor. Over 90% of first years didn't have that kind of chakra. That was one reason Itachi's teacher argued he was wasting time attending class with a shadow clone and specifically asked the 3rd Hokage's permission for him to graduate early. Culture was secondary in this world. Strength came first. Uzumaki Naruto was the best example. The morning exam posed no problem for Izayoi-kun or Hinata. The afternoon tests, shuriken throwing, taijutsu combat, and a new survival exercise were also manageable. In shuriken tossing, Izayoi-kun easily scored perfectly. Taijutsu and the survival exercise were likewise not daunting for Hinata, so long as she wasn't matched with Izayoi-kun. In taijutsu, she was already unbeatable among the first years. Her decisive strikes, especially the gentle fist, were a nightmare for the other kids. But if she drew Izayoi-kun, her chances at 2nd place would vanish. During the 3 previous terms, she had already been matched with him and lost, so her comprehensive score was lower than his. Even if she somehow scored full marks on every part of the annual exam, she wouldn't surpass him for valedictorian. Likewise, if Izayoi-kun slipped on a cultural question and somehow lost to Sakura Haruno, Sakura still wouldn't have the comprehensive score to become valedictorian. At that point, among first years only Izayoi-kun, Uchiha Sasuke, and Shino Aburame remained undefeated in actual combat. Sasuke's and Shino's cultural exam results and comprehensive scores were both lower than Izayoi-kun's and even lower than Hinata's. Even perfect exam scores wouldn't be enough for them to claim valedictorian. All Hinata needed was full marks in actual combat to secure 2nd, unless someone from another class had a surprisingly outstanding comprehensive score, which was highly unlikely. When the taijutsu pairings began, Iruka Umino stood in the middle of the gathered first years holding a clipboard. "Next match, Izayoi-kun versus Uzumaki Naruto," he called. Naruto clasped his hands over his head and groaned in despair. "Why do I always get Izayoi-kun? I'm doomed." For Naruto, cultural studies and shuriken throwing were nightmares. Only taijutsu gave him any chance. Now even that slim hope vanished. Izayoi-kun, however, brightened. Finally, he was matched with the Child of Prophecy. Chapter 13. Crush Naruto, Uzumaki Bloodline. This was the first time Izanami had been paired against Uzumaki Naruto. It felt like fate. Between Naruto and Uchiha Sasuke, causality seemed to be at work. Of 10 taijutsu pairings, the 2 of them ended up matched nearly half the time. As a result, Izanami rarely got a chance to fight Naruto. Fortunately, the Otsutsuki bloodline, red, like the sage body, gave him an enormous reserve of chakra. Otherwise, he wouldn't have known how to force Naruto's sage mode into play. Now that he'd finally been matched with Naruto, Izanami was thrilled. Luck was clearly on his side. Maybe he'd even get a valuable entry. He swallowed his excitement, stood, and moved to Iruka Umino's right. Naruto strode to the opposite side, jaw set, not willing to back down. Izanami raised his right hand, held up his index and middle fingers, and smiled. "Naruto, let's have a good match." Naruto blinked, and the tension that had been coiling inside him eased. Looking at Izanami, warmth surged through him. This was different. The look in this boy's eyes wasn't like the adult's disdain or his peers' exclusion. There was no contempt, only an impartial kindness. Aside from Iruka, who had acknowledged him last semester, Izanami was the second person to treat him like this. The thought made Naruto feel like crying, but he swallowed it down, nodded vigorously, and grinned. "Yeah, let's have a good match." He lifted his own index and middle fingers. The blue in his eyes matched Izanami's, and his expression hardened with resolve. Iruka watched them, relieved, then took a step back and called, "Seventh round, begin." They rushed each other. Naruto's approach was simple and repetitive. He didn't vary his attacks much. He closed in and threw straight punches. Izanami, though he lacked a Sharingan, read movement with uncanny perception. The instant Naruto tensed his shoulder, Izanami knew the punch was coming. He completed a forward step and a left upward swing, the back of his hand striking Naruto's wrist and redirecting the straight punch. His right fist followed and connected with Naruto's left cheek with a solid crack. The blow sent Naruto sprawling, his face swelled and quickly bruised. It hurt so much. Naruto gasped, but he didn't give up. He scrambled up and attacked again. Every punch and kick, however, was anticipated. Izanami either blocked, dodged, or used the opponent's momentum to counter. Even incredibly fast strikes, those that carried a chakra aura and whistled through the air, were handled with ease. Naruto's onslaught looked chaotic and, crucially, full of openings. With each hit he took, his clothes grew dirtier and his face marked. He looked disheveled. Izanami, in contrast, remained immaculate. Still, despite being outclassed, Naruto didn't surrender. The boy who once whimpered the first time he'd been hit now bit his lip and went silent, focusing. His attacks grew less random. He was improving, even if he might relapse later. In this moment, he was getting stronger. Catching that change, Izanami decided to finish it. He bent and squatted under one of Naruto's incoming strikes, used the momentum to sweep, and sent Naruto crashing to the ground. Without giving him time to rise, Izanami brought his fist down, stopping it just above Naruto's face. Iruka's voice rang out. "Uzumaki Naruto has lost the ability to continue. Winner, Izanami." At almost the same moment Iruka spoke, one of the purple bubbles that only Izanami could see around Naruto popped. A narrow beam of purple light shot toward Izanami and flowed into his body. A small, transparent bubble formed around Naruto. It wasn't white or red, and it was empty inside. Izanami had seen this before. The entry had entered a cooldown. Once the cooldown finished, the transparent bubble would become purple again, and the entry would reappear. Entries could be obtained repeatedly. He just had never acquired the same entry from the same person more than once. Izanami already knew what the purple entry had been. He felt a thrill, but he didn't summon his personal panel right away. He reached out a hand to Naruto and smiled. "Naruto, you were amazing. Let's fight again sometime." Naruto, bruised and beaten flat out, but seeing the sincerity in Izanami's eyes with no hint of scorn, felt a sudden wash of relief. He grabbed Izanami's hand, used the leverage to pull himself up, and flashed a grin. "Izanami, you're incredible. Next time this guy won't lose. I can see your progress. I look forward to our next match." They tapped index and middle fingers, a sign of reconciliation, mirroring the seal they'd used before the fight. In the Naruto universe, the hand seal of reconciliation corresponded to the hand seal of opposition used before battle. It symbolized that despite great differences, Shinobi could still make peace. In the original story, Naruto and Sasuke used that same seal to end the 1,000-year cycle between Asura and Indra. If the reincarnations of Asura and Indra could not reconcile, their chakra would keep reincarnating, and the cycle would continue. Even without overt conflict or Sakura's involvement, Naruto and Sasuke harbored deep resentment. Naruto could easily form the hand seal of reconciliation with Izanami, but not with Sasuke. None of that concerned Izanami now. He rejoined his team, casually dealing with his classmates, and summoned the light screen only he could see. As the purple beam had seeped into him, a prompt sounded in his mind. "Ding! You have obtained the talent entry, Uzumaki Bloodline. Merge or disassemble." "Merge," he answered. A moment later, a new talent entry appeared in his entry bar. Uzumaki Bloodline, purple. Chapter 14, Chief Student. Although he hadn't awakened the sage body, Izanami couldn't help feeling a little disappointed. Still, having manifested the Uzumaki bloodline was already extremely fortunate. The Uzumaki, like the Senju, Uchiha, and Kaguya lineages, are branches of the Otsutsuki bloodline. As descendants of the sage body, both the Uzumaki and Senju inherit strong vitality and an astonishing reserve of chakra. In addition to their skill with sealing techniques, the Uzumaki possess three potent clan traits: the mind's eye of the Kagura, the adamantine sealing chains, and physical healing. The mind's eye of the Kagura is among the strongest sensing techniques in the ninja world. The adamantine sealing chains blend offense and defense, able to form barriers and perform sealing justa that can hold even a tailed beast fast. Physical healing consumes chakra to mend injuries, whether one's own or another's, with remarkable efficiency. All three are first-rate support abilities. But just as not every Uchiha awakens the Sharingan, not every Uzumaki can manifest all three clan traits. In the original timeline, Uzumaki Naruto hadn't awakened any of them until he gained Kurama's trust. After that, he at least gained the good and evil sensing ability, like Uzumaki Mito. The reason the other gifts didn't appear could be that the full sage body was overwhelmingly dominant, or simply that the original author didn't want to give him too many advantages. Still, it was undeniable that Naruto not only carried the Uzumaki bloodline, but as the reincarnation of Asura's chakra, it was unusually pure. And now Izanami had manifested the Uzumaki heritage from that lineage. If fortune smiled on him, he might even unlock one of those three unique abilities. If, like Karen, he managed to awaken all three at once, he would become a top-tier presence in sensing, sealing, and healing. Even if none of the special traits appeared, he would still inherit the sage body's robust vitality, so it wasn't a loss in any case. Izanami put away the light screen and watched the matches on the field. As winners were decided round after round, the taijutsu bouts wrapped up quickly. Next came the final exam, the newly added survival exercise. Before it began, Iruka Umino led the students to the infirmary for treatment, then to the props room to let them pick out items, essentials for hiding techniques. Unlike the bell-grabbing survival test for Genin, the Ninja Academy's survival exercise was mostly hide-and-seek, designed to test proficiency in concealment, the body flicker technique, and the three-body technique. Those who performed well scored highly or full marks. Those who did poorly would get another chance like in the Chunin exams, but if they still failed to meet the standards, they would be caught. For Izanami, who had long since mastered the three-body technique, the exam posed no challenge. He lasted effortlessly until time ran out and once again earned a perfect score. Though the official results wouldn't be announced until the new semester in April, the title of top student was already within his reach. "Hinata, see you at the usual place tomorrow," he said after class. "Okay," she answered. After school, they parted at an intersection, making plans as usual. Though Izanami no longer took Hinata to the abandoned training ground, now a ruin since the Uchiha's downfall, he continued training with her. Their training spots had simply shifted to the school playground or the courtyard of Izanami's house. The Nine-Tails attack had not destroyed his home. His parents, both Shinobi, had left him a modest inheritance, a two-story detached house with a small yard. Compared to Uzumaki Naruto, whose inheritance had been seized and whose late mother's scarf gathered dust in storage, Izanami's circumstances were pleasantly ordinary. Fortunately, his parents in this life had been regular shinobi, and the village's handling of their estate hadn't been scandalous. The academy ran on 3 terms a year, and aside from the long summer break, the holidays were short. In the blink of an eye, April 1st arrived, and the new school year began. The 6th years had graduated, and Jinin, who had been acknowledged by their supervising jonin, had started taking missions. Those who hadn't been acknowledged either returned to repeat the year, were recruited into other departments, or dropped out after several repeats to become civilians. Students from 1st to 5th year were promoted and shuffled into new classrooms, and a fresh batch of first years who'd passed the entrance exam filled the empty slots. The area in front of the notice board was crowded. New first years checked their classrooms while upperclassmen read their final exam results. "Hey, Izanami, have you checked the results on the board?" "Amazing, Izanami. You're our class's top student. As expected, Sasuke doesn't stand a chance against you. Izanami is first, and Hinata is second. You two desk mates took the top 2 spots. That's incredible. As soon as Izanami entered the new classroom, classmates, boys and girls alike, surrounded him. He didn't mind. He stood smiling and chatted with them for some time. It confirmed what he'd suspected. He was the top student, and second place wasn't Uchiha Sasuke, but Hinata Hyuga. Izanami wasn't surprised. Hinata's scores had always been among the best. In the first stage of the Chunin exams in the original timeline, out of the 12 rookie genin, only she and Sakura hadn't had to cheat. With his help, Hinata had learned tree climbing and water walking in her first year. She was no longer timid. She acted decisively in combat. If she could still lose to Sasuke, then Izanami might as well go find a block of tofu and bang his head on it. Sasuke should be thankful he hadn't had to face Hinata in the taijutsu matches. Otherwise, he wouldn't even have kept third place. After all, Shino Aburame wasn't a pushover either. Izanami only returned to his seat when it was almost time for class. "Good morning, Izanami," Hinata said, already waiting. "Morning," he replied, and they began to chat. "Congratulations on being the top student," Hinata said, obviously having seen the notice. "Congratulations on taking second," Izanami returned with a smile. "Now your father will be even less likely to stop you from going out." Hinata nodded repeatedly, her face lighting up with a happy smile. It was clear she realized her father had seen through their arrangement long ago. The fact she hadn't been grounded, that she was still free to go out and train with Izanami, showed he'd tacitly approved. Thinking back to all the times she'd been caught practicing water walking at home, but never reprimanded, Hinata felt certain it was because of the progress she'd made. Now that she'd taken second place, and the boy who taught her was the top student, she was sure her father's approval of Izanami would only grow. The thought made her quietly glow with joy. Chapter 15. Super Hurricane Ball. Uchiha Clan Exterminated. The second-year curriculum wasn't much different from the first. The cultural subjects were the same few classes, only harder. Afternoon physical training had been dropped. Any student who hadn't already been advised to quit had clearly manifested chakra. As long as they saw the 6 years through, they'd either become genin, acknowledged by a jonin and prioritized by the village for further cultivation, or be selected into another department. The chance of wasting 6 years and ending up an ordinary villager again was slim. The next 5 years would focus on intelligence gathering and assassination techniques. Those lessons were no challenge for Izanami. They were boring. Within days, he abandoned his plan to attend in person and sent a shadow clone to sit the classes while he stayed home to cultivate. He couldn't practice 5-element ninjutsu at home, but he could work on ninjutsu development. Most advanced ninjutsu required a solid foundation in either nature transformation or form transformation, but Izanami, as a transmigrator, knew of one exception: a hand-seal-less, attribute-less A-rank technique that required raw chakra above all else, the Rasengan. The fourth Hokage had developed it over years, inspired by the tailed beast ball. As Naruto's signature jutsu, the Rasengan was practiced from childhood to adulthood and expanded into many variations. It was also one of the few techniques whose full training method had been shown in the original story. That cultivation arc was unforgettable to anyone who'd watched. Izanami wasn't cultivating the Rasengan as a mere trump card. He wanted to use it as a stepping stone to invent something new. The Rasengan's hand-seal-less design and its principle made it an ideal foundation for an original technique he remembered from an anime episode, the Super Hurricane Serial Spheres, also called Multiple Great Ball Gale, the jutsu used by Otsutsuki Asura against Indra. The idea was to form a main energy ball approaching the scale of a Great Ball Rasengan, then condense 5 rotating Rasengan-sized spheres inside it. Like a Rasen shuriken, it could be thrown or launched. On detonation, it produced a 6-fold impact. If the central ball was destroyed, the 5 inner spheres would scatter and continue to strike. And, like Naruto's Rasengan variations, the whole construct could be infused with elemental nature, even all 5 elements at once, creating a devastating effect comparable to the third Hokage's 5-element Great Bullet technique. Without his Otsutsuki bloodline, red, hand-sealless talent, the all-attribute physique, purple, and chakra control already upgraded to purple level, Izanami would never have dared attempt this. Those traits gave him the confidence to push beyond a simple Rasengan. With his refined chakra control, he mastered a basic Rasengan in a week. The next steps were to grow it to the size of a basketball, keep it from bursting, and then try to condense smaller spheres within. But developing such an unstable, high-energy jutsu at home was dangerous. If it exploded, the consequences would be unimaginable. So he waited patiently for a time when the village would be distracted, when chaos might provide cover. May 15th arrived. That afternoon, second-year Class 1 unusually had 4 lessons. The final survival exercise lasted until dusk. The Uchiha clan territory sat near the Nanga River, practically on the village outskirts. By the time Uchiha Sasuke returned to the clan compound without using body flicker, it was already night. A full moon hung in the sky, its glow tinged blood red by the evening haze. Izanami's shadow clone had followed Sasuke at a distance after leaving school. Watching his back as Sasuke jogged home, Izanami thought of what was coming. After today, the Sasuke who had been relatively easygoing and indifferent to grades would be gone. He expected a new Sasuke to emerge. Cold, obsessed with the clan's standing in his studies, someone emotionally brittle enough to crack under small provocations. The thought of that future Sasuke, tragic as it was, had been what Izanami had been waiting a full year for. The next day, news shocked Konoha and radiated outward through every spy network. After the fall of the Senju, the Uchiha, Konoha's premier noble clan, and the ninja world's foremost bloodline, famous for their one-on-one dominance, their eye-copying techniques, and terrifying genjutsu, had been annihilated. The killer was not the Hyuga, not Konoha's elders, nor another great village. It was Uchiha Itachi, the eldest son of the clan patriarch, only 13 years old. In the days that followed, the name Uchiha Itachi spread like wildfire. He became Konoha's and the ninja world's youngest S-rank rogue ninja in legend and rumor. Izanami saw villagers talking about it as he left his house. The uproar rivaled the Nine-Tails attack in Konoha Year 48. In a short span of years, Konoha had lost the 4th Hokage and his wife, countless powerful shinobi, and now its foremost noble clan. The village had never seemed so vulnerable since its founding. Once the dominant force with Kage-level strongmen to spare, Konoha was now left with the aging 3rd Hokage as its only comparable figurehead. After the Nine-Tails attack, Kumogakure had already begun to eye Konoha with newfound appetite. Losing the Uchiha should, by rights, have invited even more aggression. Yet strangely, Konoha remained calm. The other great ninja villages had noticed something off. Chapter 16, Sasuke's Challenge, a duel without rules. The leadership of the great ninja villages were not fools. The Uchiha were a prestigious clan with a lineage stretching back 1,000 years, and the Sharingan remained the strongest Kekkei Genkai in the ninja world after the loss of Wood Release. Countless shinobi coveted a 3 Tomoe Sharingan. Just one example of its power was Kakashi Hatake, the copy ninja, who became known as Konoha's technician by copying thousands of jutsu with a single 3 Tomo eye. In truth, even copying jutsu was only a 2 Tomo ability. The 3rd Tomo unlocked genjutsu strength few outsiders could ever use. Any Uchiha who could fully wield the 3 Tomoe Sharingan became an elite jonin, virtually unbeatable in single combat. There were surely dozens such fighters in the clan, plus many more with 1 or 2 Tomo Sharingan and ordinary members who had not awakened at all. It would have been impossible to slaughter them all overnight without causing a commotion. Yet the Uchiha were annihilated in a single night. Uchiha Itachi, the alleged perpetrator wielding the Mangekyo Sharingan, escaped Konoha. The implications ran deep. The massacre suggested involvement by Konoha's higher-ups. The scale and precision of the action, the willingness to accept the fallout, shook the great ninja villages. They sent in spies to gather intelligence, but after those efforts failed, no one pushed the matter further. The great ninja villages had been hollowed out by the Third Shinobi World War and were not ready to provoke another conflict. Even the Hidden Cloud chose to maintain the uneasy balance and prepare for the next war, instead of stirring things up. Izanami didn't know every detail, but he could infer enough. Having read the original story, he also knew the next few years would be relatively quiet, the best time to develop. He took note and prepared accordingly. Sasuke Uchiha, who had been trapped in the Mangekyo Genjutsu, lay unconscious for a full week before finally waking. When he returned to class, everything about him had changed. The old Sasuke might get a headache when surrounded by girls, but he would never say cruel things or strike anyone. That earlier reserve only made the girls cling to him more. Now they dared not swarm him at all. His gaze and presence were too chilling. Classmates avoided him and wouldn't meet his eyes. Only Izanami could see the contradiction beneath the surface. Sasuke was brittle and stubborn. He was battered, bruised, aching for warmth and affection, and yet his pride made him refuse pity. Only someone like Uzumaki Naruto, who had been reborn 1,000 times and understood destiny in ways most couldn't, might find a way past Sasuke's barriers and earn his trust. After afternoon classes, Izanami finally saw the moment he'd been waiting for. After the taijutsu sparring ended, students drifted into small groups as usual, hanging around the academy, going home with friends, or leaving alone. The old Sasuke would always go home by himself. But today, he didn't. He sought Izanami out and repeated the very words Izanami had used years before. "Izanami, want to spar?" Izanami, who had deliberately stayed at the academy instead of leaving with Hinata just to wait for this, suppressed a private smile. Outwardly, he feigned surprise and teased, "You weren't interested when I challenged you before. Why now? Stop talking. Are you scared?" Sasuke shot back, not answering the question. At first, Sasuke had only wanted training with Itachi. He hadn't wasted time on others. Now his clan was gone, and his life's purpose narrowed to killing Itachi and reviving the Uchiha name. To slay Itachi, he needed overwhelming power. To revive the clan, he needed to make the world remember Uchiha's strength and glory. That meant he had to be stronger than his peers, and Izanami was the one in front of him. Defeating Izanami would be proof. Izanami didn't know any of this. He read Sasuke's provocation as simple tsundere bravado, and he knew when to push and when not to. He smiled and nodded. "All right, let's have a match." "Good, let's go to the training ground," Sasuke said, face lit with fighting spirit. "No need, I'll take you somewhere else." Izanami guided him away, toward the abandoned training field. A few days earlier, Izanami had resumed training in the wilderness. He'd also marked Rin Nohara's Memorial Day on his calendar and avoided certain places at that time of year. Now the two reached the overgrown training ground by the academy where Izanami and Hinata often practiced. The ground and trees were scarred with strike marks and traces of jutsu. Sasuke's pupils narrowed as he took in the damage. If all these marks were from Izanami, a realization stirred in him. This wasn't luck. Izanami must know elemental ninjutsu, not just basic techniques, but the kind of skills that left those scars, and he must have learned them on his own. That explained why he could keep Sasuke suppressed, not because of some fluke, but because he had worked harder. The thought ignited Sasuke's fighting spirit. Only by fighting someone like this could he get stronger. Only by defeating him could he prove his worth. "How do you want to fight?" Izanami asked. "Taijutsu only, or a no-rules match?" No rules meant using anything available. Three-body technique, invisibility jutsu, the body flicker technique, tools, even elemental ninjutsu not taught at the academy. No-rules matches were dangerous. The academy only permitted them for 6th graders at special events, and they required a referee and a medical ninja because accidents could turn deadly. If Iruka Umino had been here, he would have been horrified and rushed over to stop them. Sasuke didn't hesitate. "No rules match," he said. Chapter 17. "Ah? You've got guts," Izanami said, unsurprised by Uchiha Sasuke's choice. On the surface, he even gave Sasuke a thumbs up. It was a good choice for Izanami, too. If it came down to pure taijutsu, Sasuke couldn't show his full strength, and even a win would yield a much lower item drop rate than an unrestricted fight. Izanami knew this from experience. When Hinata didn't use Gentle Fist to inject chakra, Izanami had beaten her without a single drop. The gap in strength had been too wide. Only when Hinata used Gentle Fist and went all out had Izanami, over the past year, ever obtained anything from her. 2 items, 1 purple and 1 blue. Bloodline limit, Byakugan purple, and chakra control blue. It wasn't that Izanami underestimated Sasuke. He knew the plot and the boy's talent. Sasuke had been taking shortcuts since he was 3, essentially cheating from the start. That gave him a 3 to 4 year head start on other cheaters. If Sasuke hadn't already mastered Fire Release Great Fireball technique, he wouldn't even be a threat. But that technique could increase Sasuke's drop rate, so an unrestricted match was the optimal choice. Then let's begin. Izanami stepped back several paces to create distance, raised his index and middle fingers, and Sasuke answered by forming the seal of confrontation. They closed the gap at once. As they neared, Sasuke threw a punch. Izanami sidestepped, snap-kicked in a 180-degree spin toward Sasuke's face with astonishing flexibility. Sasuke had no time to dodge and could only raise his other forearm to block. His body kicked back several steps. By the time he recovered, he was in a deeply disadvantaged position. Izanami closed in, his arms moving in a blur, striking at Sasuke's face and chest. The blows weren't devastating individually, but the speed was so relentless, Sasuke struggled to react. He barely parried the first hit when the second slipped through and slammed into his face. The rhythm of Sasuke's defense collapsed. He became a sandbag. Izanami even used Sasuke's raised arms against him, grabbing and pulling to disrupt his balance. What began as an apparently patternless assault gradually fell into a deadly rhythm, like the Hyuga's 8 trigrams palms without chakra. The blows didn't do massive damage, but during the combo, the opponent was helpless. After an indeterminate number of strikes, Izanami finally ended the barrage, spun a full 360 degrees, and delivered a heavy kick to Sasuke's torso, sending him flying. The force was worse than the combo. Sasuke landed gasping for breath. As Izanami retracted his leg, something flickered across Sasuke's face. The image of Itachi, replayed over and over from the days he'd been trapped in Genjutsu, forced to watch the clan massacre. Itachi's contemptuous words echoed in his head. "You're too weak right now. Live a miserable life from now on. Scrape by and struggle to survive with everything you have." Sasuke's features twisted. "Uchiha Itachi, I'll kill you. Fire Release, Great Fireball technique." Mistaking Izanami for Itachi, he shaped the signs and exhaled a small flame that swelled into a roaring, high-temperature Great Fireball aimed straight at Izanami. Perfect timing. Wind Release, Wind Cutter technique. Izanami, far from surprised, grinned inwardly. He pretended to form hand signs and breathed out. An invisible rush of air congealed into a scythe-shaped, translucent white blade that met the oncoming Great Fireball. The wind blade sliced the fireball in half. Shorn of most of its force, the remainder of the fireball continued forward. Then the wind blade, its strength greatly diminished, followed through and struck Sasuke. Rip, clothes tore. Blood sprayed. Sasuke landed and lay motionless. Izanami walked over calmly. Anyone could die here and now, but not Sasuke or Uzumaki Naruto. Word that the Outer Path demonic statue had been summoned from the moon must have reached the Sage of Six Paths. He would already know a second pair of Rinnegan had been born. He would not allow the present Indra and Asura reincarnations to die before their time. Besides, if Sasuke fell to a weakened C-rank windcutter, he wouldn't be worthy of the story's male lead. At Sasuke's side, Izanami found a pulse. The wind blade had torn clothing and made a flesh wound, but no bone was exposed. He squatted and applied basic medical ninjutsu. Pop! Something crisp and high-pitched cracked in the air, sharper than the pop of a balloon. Izanami's expression sharpened. Bubbles, only he could see them, floated around Sasuke. He watched one burst, and a red beam shot out from it toward him. Huh? The red light expanded across his vision. Izanami froze. Red? How many reds did Sasuke have? Was red the top rank, or was it purple? The prompt that immediately appeared in his mind removed any doubt. He'd hit the jackpot. Ding! You have obtained the talent item, Sage's Eye, red. Integrate, or decompose. Integrate. Izanami answered in his mind, trying not to let his mouth betray the excitement. He forced his expression neutral as he integrated the item, though a twitch betrayed him. He was grinning inwardly. All at once, he understood what lucky players felt like. Using Hinata as a reference, he'd assumed it would take ages to get Sasuke's red item. He'd mentally prepared to hunt Sasuke for the next 5 years. If he still couldn't get a red during Ninja Academy, he'd slow his own growth to match Sasuke and Hinata. Instead, in his very first unrestricted fight, he had pulled a red. Sage's Eye, red. He had actually hit that tiny probability. The realization left him almost speechless with exhilaration. Izanami, who had won the lottery, did not rush to explore the changes the sage's eye might bring. He cleared his mind first and focused on healing Uchiha Sasuke. Seeing Sasuke's hollowed eyes and the dark circles that told of recent hardship, Izanami felt a flash of pity. The ninja world had no shortage of tragic orphans, but children who'd once had happy families and then lost everything were rarer. Only two came to his mind. One was Nagato, the other was Uchiha Sasuke. Compared with Nagato, who had Yahiko, Konan, and Jiraiya early on, Sasuke's fate, shaped by Uchiha Itachi, felt harsher. From the start, he had been driven by revenge, and when the truth finally came clear, his revolutionary instincts had barely surfaced before being crushed by the only person he trusted. Afterwards, trying to atone, he disappeared from home for years, hoarding every scrap of information about the Otsutsuki clan. If Izanami did nothing, Sasuke's life here would be worse than it had been in the original story. Before graduation, Sasuke had been the school's star. Now Izanami stood at the top, Hinata second, and Sasuke would be lucky to take third. After graduation, he would suffer setback after setback, forced to watch Naruto overtake him at astonishing speed. Should Izanami intervene? He considered the question in silence. At that moment, Sasuke, who had fainted from the fall, woke. Bloodshot, wary, he stared at his chest, where the wound had closed into a thin scar. He replayed the fight in his head. Whether taijutsu or ninjutsu, he had been outclassed. The barrage of attacks, the lower body strength to sustain such speed, they were on a different level. And the green light he'd seen when he opened his eyes suggested something more. Izanami had medical skill as well. A wave of frustration passed through Sasuke. He admitted it to himself. He had lost. He wasn't a sore loser. He didn't hate Izanami. The sudden ninjutsu release earlier had been reckless and dangerous, and Sasuke accepted his defeat readily. Izanami patted his shoulder and, genuinely impressed, said, "You're good. I thought I was the only one in class who had learned 5 elements ninjutsu. I didn't expect you to know it as well. Typical of an Uchiha genius." Then Izanami stood and offered a hand. "You're in no shape now. Go home, rest, and come find me when you've recovered. Let's spar again." Sasuke sat up slowly, a small smile flickering at Izanami's praise. A warmth, the feeling of being seen, rose in him for the first time since he'd woken. He took Izanami's hand and gripped it. "Next time I won't lose." Izanami raised an index and middle finger playfully. "Train hard. I'm very strong. Just you wait." Sasuke's fighting spirit returned. They formed the seal of reconciliation together, a promise between rivals, and the gesture was captured on a faint, transparent crystal monitoring device. Hiruzen Sarutobi, watching and puffing at his pipe, allowed a relieved smile. "The new leaves are beginning to sprout," he murmured. At this age, Sasuke was especially vulnerable. Hiruzen had promised Itachi he would look after Sasuke, kept him under observation, and protected him from self-destruction, and he needed Sasuke alive if Itachi was to remain an effective spy. Anbu had been shadowing Sasuke from a distance. The report that he and Izanami had slipped out of the academy to the abandoned training ground reached Hiruzen immediately. Thankfully, Izanami had behaved himself. When he was stunned earlier, he kept his head down and did not act out in ways that might invite Yamanaka mind-reading. Hiruzen knew the boy. This generation included the 9-tailed Jinchuriki and heirs of many clans in the same class. Izanami, who had beaten them all to the top, had been on his radar for a year. Hiruzen had noticed he already knew Shadow Clone technique and a low-level wind release, and that he trained often with the Hyuga main family's young lady in the abandoned ground. Every era produced civilian geniuses: Orochimaru, Minato Namikaze, even the unknown Yakushi Kabuto. Kakashi might be called a civilian genius too, lacking a bloodline limit. Izanami was not unmatched among them, but his talent was enough for focused cultivation. With proper training, he could at least become an all-round jonin. If he mastered a forbidden jutsu, he might become an elite jonin, a trump card fighter. That was why Hiruzen kept him under quiet watch. After parting with Sasuke, Izanami went home and summoned the private light screen only he could see. In his skill bar, the Otsutsuki bloodline, red, still occupied the top slot, but immediately beneath it sat Sage's Eye, red, rather than the golden Beyond Kage qualification. The new skill hadn't yet many obvious outward change, but Izanami felt the stirrings of something shifting inside him. The sage's eye was not the true Rinnegan. It was Otsutsuki Indra's exclusive ability, an inheritance of the six paths sage's yin chakra and spiritual energy, the ultimate form of yin release. It was not Indra's chakra itself, but a pure yin release split from Otsutsuki Hagoromo. Reincarnated bodies usually needed recognition, growth, or talent to unearth such power. Izanami, however, did not expect to have to wait. He would grow quickly, like Otsutsuki Indra. Over the coming years, his spiritual energy and yin release chakra would surge. Izanami let himself smile. He ought to be considered the second Otsutsuki Indra now, he thought. If he could see Indra's talent skill, it wouldn't be an Uchiha bloodline, but a high-level Otsutsuki bloodline. What gave someone the constitution to wield limitless pupil power without changing their eyes? It would allow him to cast 5 elements ninjutsu without hand seals. That made sense. Indra's Otsutsuki bloodline had to be red level. Anything above red seemed impossible. Otherwise, a reincarnated Indra shouldn't have needed to unify the 2 poles to awaken a Rinnegan. He could have transformed directly from Sharingan to Rinnegan like Otsutsuki Hagoromo. For now, Izanami was effectively the second Otsutsuki Indra. Only by raising his Otsutsuki bloodline higher could he hope to become a second Otsutsuki Hagoromo or Hamura. July 23rd, Konoha year 57. Konoha, Hyuga clan compound. Bang, bang, bang. A steady, heavy rhythm of thuds echoed from the dojo in the clan leader's residence. Inside, 2 children, a boy and a girl, were locked in a taijutsu spar. Their hands were the source of the sound, veins standing out at their temples, movements so fast they left afterimages, fingertips wreathed in blue chakra as they probed for vital points. Each strike was met with a block or a counter. Openings were seized with ruthless immediacy. The clash of chakra stirred the air into roaring waves, and the match tested their wills as much as their bodies. One slip, one lapse in concentration, and the contest could end in an instant. After dozens of rounds, a crisp jab decided the bout. Thud. Under Hyuga Neiji's wide, startled eyes, Hinata, expression serious, pressed a finger into his torso and poured chakra into him. Neiji's own chakra in his hands vanished. Then Hinata's attacks came in a flurry, each strike sealing his circulation and stabbing pain through him. Neji gritted his teeth, refusing to cry out. When the combo ended, Hinata withdrew her hands, the veins at her temples subsiding. She looked down at Neji, who sat on the floor, and said softly, "Oni-chan Neji, thank you for your guidance." Hyuga Hiyashi, standing nearby, allowed himself a relieved smile. But before Hinata could turn toward him, he composed his face again and, expressionless, addressed Neji. "Neji, go get treated." "Yes, clan leader." Neji bowed slightly to Hinata, forcing his displeasure and resentment behind a mask of courtesy. "Thank you for your guidance, young lady." Then he turned and left. Hinata did not notice the conflict flicker across his face. After the family monthly exam, Hinata hurried over to Hiyashi, anticipation bright on her features. "Father, may I take Hanabi out to play?" Go ahead," Hiyashi nodded. "Thank you, father." Hinata smiled faintly, then trotted out of the dojo. She carried 3-year-old Hanabi out of the compound and set off to find Izanami. Exactly 3 years had passed since Hinata began training with Izanami. The change in her was plain. Her victory over Neji and Hiyashi's approving demeanor testified to how far she'd come. This wasn't her first time beating Neji. Since the start of the year, she had consistently bested him, and by mid-year, her advantage had become overwhelming. Gentle fist training honed not only the Byakugan, but chakra control, and in that discipline, only Izanami surpassed Hinata among their peers. Even Sakura, with her fine chakra control, could not match Hinata's daily, rigorous practice. Defeating the cousin she'd once feared had reshaped Hinata into a confident young woman. Hiyashi and the main house elders began to see her as the heir. Many elders urged Hiyashi to place the caged bird curse mark on Hanabi to secure succession. Hiyashi refused, saying his late wife's memory deserved that he let Hanabi enjoy a happy childhood. He would decide when she turned 12. He stopped forbidding Hinata to spend time with Izanami as well, even as he watched their relationship subtly deepen. No one knew Hiyashi's true designs. He was playing a long game, apparently determined that neither daughter be bound by the curse mark. Izanami, of course, had no inkling. He assumed Hinata's outings were permitted simply because she had proven herself worthy to be heir. And even if he had suspected a different consequence, that Hanabi might be marked earlier, he wouldn't have cared. To him, the caged bird curse mark was just another curse mark, not as notable as Orochimaru's earth and heaven curse marks. If it ever mattered, once he mastered yin-yang release, he could remove it. Even if Hanabi were marked, it would only be a temporary setback. She was still so young. She hadn't even finished the academy when the Shippuden arc ended, after all. Practicalities like flaws in the Byakugan could be dealt with later. Knock, knock, knock. Oni-chan, I came to play. Open the door. Izanami opened the door to find two figures, one tall, one small. The little one barreled forward and hugged his waist. Oni-chan, let's go out and play. Hanabi was 3, dressed in a custom pink kimono, her short black hair brushing her ears and bangs parted in the middle. Her cherubic face was round and deliciously pinchable. Izanami obliged, giving her cheeks a playful squeeze. Okay, Hanabi, what do you want to play today? Around Hanabi, colorful bubbles of information floated in Izanami's perception. Princess of the Byakugan, gold. Bloodline limit, Byakugan, purple. Otsutsuki bloodline, blue. Jonin aptitude, blue. Chakra control. Compared to ordinary children, Hanabi's profile was luxurious. The only category where she lagged behind Hinata was the top-tier Princess of the Byakugan. Her Byakugan was of extremely high purity, 1 rank shy of Hinata's, a purity that had once attracted Otsutsuki Toneri in the tales that became legend. Otherwise, her entries mirrored Hinata's, a younger, slightly less mature version of her sister. Plenty of potential, a child who might yet defy fate. Izanami adored the little sister-in-law. I want mochi dumplings and a piggyback ride, Hanabi announced, already trying to clamber onto his back. All right, today Hanabi's in charge. He ruffled her hair, crouched so she could climb onto his shoulders, and, holding her small hands, stood. Hinata, close the door. Yes. Hinata watched them with a fond smile as Izanami led the two out to the busy shopping street. Since their mother's death, Hinata's solitary outings with Izanami had slowly become ones that included Hanabi. Hinata remembered how she had cried that day. Before Hanabi was born, it had been Izanami and their mother who gave her the gentleness she craved. After their mother died, Hinata's dependence on Izanami only deepened. Their relationship shifted. Determined that Hanabi would not suffer as she had, Hinata redoubled her training so her little sister could enjoy a happier childhood. Whenever she had the chance, she brought Hanabi to see Izanami. She trusted his warmth more than their father's sternness. Hiyashi's aura of authority and rigorous upbringing had always been intimidating. Without their mother's affection, Hinata feared she would have broken entirely. Seeing Hanabi laughing on Izanami's shoulders, she felt certain her choices were right. Chapter 20. Future SS-level ninjutsu. Izanami, Hinata, and Hanabi were finishing a shopping trip near the Uchiha clan's Nanga River when a hidden scene unfolded beneath the roar of a massive waterfall. Any Hyuga who activated their Byakugan would have seen it at once, a cave carved out behind the falling water. Inside, loud impacts echoed, but the sound was lost in the waterfall's thunder. The rock walls trembled occasionally, as if the earth itself was being shaped. A blue-white light cut through the dark. A sphere, like a water-filled balloon, swelled rapidly to the size of a basketball, then shot into the cave's depths. Boom. An explosion, a blast of air, and flying gravel rocked the cavern. Dust billowed, only to be swept away by a gust that kept it from escaping. Once the settling dust cleared, another sphere formed and raced inward, detonating with equal violence. Over and over, the cave was born and reborn by the force of those orbs. The core is complete. Now I can make smaller spheres inside, a voice murmured. Izanami's shadow clone stood in the illuminated mouth of the cave, arranging the day's gains. He had finally mastered the basics of the Super Hurricane serial spheres, an original technique inspired by the Rasengan and its larger variants, which involved expanding the Rasengan to a size second only to the Great Ball Rasengan. The process had taken 2 years. Izanami now fully understood why Naruto had needed a shadow clone to help form the Great Ball Rasengan after 3 years of training. For someone who couldn't even perform a one-handed Rasengan, producing that much chakra while keeping it balanced and spinning at super high speed had been virtually impossible. Even for Izanami, raising his chakra control to the level required had taken him 2 full years. The challenge wasn't only collecting chakra into a huge mass, it was making that mass rotate at extreme velocity. The Rasengan itself was already the pinnacle of shape transformation, an A-rank difficulty. The Great Ball Rasengan sat between A and S. S-rank techniques were the kind of secret jutsu, so difficult that talent and effort alone might not guarantee success. Creating one large sphere had been harrowing. Creating 5 smaller spheres within it, and then simultaneously infusing each of them with a different nature transformation, pushed the idea into a league beyond S-rank, SS rank. Even Otsutsuki Asura hadn't achieved that. But Izanami had set his sights on it. His potential exceeded even Asura's, who had needed Hagoromo's intervention. If purple grade chakra control wasn't enough, he would upgrade his chakra control to golden grade. If he could perfect the Super Hurricane serial spheres, a single technique might be enough to change everything, just as Naruto's Rasengan had been decisive in the original timeline. The shadow clone sat cross-legged and continued shaping basketball-sized spheres with both hands, but this time he did not hurl them away. He worked inside the cave, building the core and testing the formation. When the clone exhausted its chakra, it dissolved into white mist, and the fatigue and learning accumulated by the clone were fed back to Izanami's main body. Izanami, who had been feeding Hanabi mochi by the riverside, barely lifted an eyebrow at the feedback, and then went on smiling. Hinata, who had watched quietly, didn't notice anything amiss. Since beginning to master the Rasengan and attempting to develop the Super Hurricane serial spheres, Izanami had rarely trained with his main body. He preferred to send shadow clones into the cave, and when he did train in person, it was only to spar with Hinata at an abandoned training ground. He was pretty sure Hiruzen Sarutobi had used crystal ball ninjutsu to keep an eye on him and Sasuke. Over the past 2 years, he'd sparred with Uchiha Sasuke every week or two. The intensity of their no-holds-barred duels would have drawn Hiruzen's attention. If he weren't worried about his Byakugan being detected, Izanami might even have activated it to see whether Anbu were watching. Using clones had another advantage. He could limit each clone's chakra and keep the feedback at an acceptable level. After Hanabi finished her mochi, Izanami carried her on his shoulders, using body flicker to race, climbing trees, even walking on water, giving her the thrills of a kid's roller coaster. Hanabi, though young, had already seen Hinata and Neji's fights and several of Izanami's training sessions. Like in the original story, she wanted to become gentle but strong like Hinata. She wasn't much interested in playing with other children. She preferred sticking close to Izanami and being taken on daring little adventures. He suspected that when she began extracting and training chakra, she'd be even more clingy. After dusk, he waved a fond goodbye to his clingy sister-in-law, stopped at the market for supplies, and used body flicker to go to the deserted Uchiha quarter, where only Uchiha Sasuke still lived. Sasuke was training in the courtyard when Izanami arrived, 2 shopping bags over his shoulder. The sight of the two made the younger boy glow with fighting spirit. "Let's eat first, then fight. Get some rest too," Izanami said with a smile. Sasuke didn't refuse. They shared hot pot on the veranda after night fell. When the night was deep and the village quiet, they slipped through the clan district like 2 arrows and dashed into the nearby forest. Bang, 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 whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The night rang with impacts, heavy landings, and projectiles slicing through the air. An explosion flared at one point, a red glow licking for a moment before it went out. Half an hour later, the pair emerged under the moon. Izanami's clothes were clean and neat, Sasuke's were torn and scorched, his skin bearing faint new marks from the fight. Yet the tired boy's eyes shone brilliantly. He'd gained much. "I won again," Sasuke said. Izanami regarded him and smiled. "As we agreed," he said, "I want to take a look through your family's ninjutsu library." Sasuke shrugged. "Do what you like. There isn't much left anyway." After the massacre of their clan, the villagers had buried the bodies and taken the clan's scrolls. Sasuke had been told by the 3rd Hokage that the village hadn't touched his family's high-level scrolls. Those had likely been taken by Itachi. Sasuke didn't resent the village. Hiruzen had promised that once Sasuke was strong enough to take leadership of the Uchiha and reclaim the assets, he could petition for the land deeds and scrolls back. For now, he couldn't protect them. Izanami knew Hiruzen told the truth. Outside of forbidden techniques like Izanagi and Izanami, the Uchiha's leftover scrolls weren't worth as much as a powerful Uchiha fighter. Compared to the presence of a true Uchiha, paper scrolls were trivial, much like the inheritance Izanami's own family had left him. Still, Sasuke's library was valuable to Izanami. His mastery of shape transformation was extraordinarily high, but his nature transformation was almost non-existent. Practicing the 5 elements ninjutsu would build up his affinity with the elemental natures. To perfect the Super Hurricane serial spheres, he needed to control 5 different nature transformations and make them fuse cleanly with the spheres. For wind release, he could draw inspiration from Naruto's methods, but for the other 4 elements, he would have to learn by practice or ask a jonin after graduation. There was, of course, a shortcut to acquiring top-tier nature transformations without years of training: awaken the Rinnegan or obtain a reincarnation eye. The thought lingered at the edge of his plans like a choice that could change everything.